Good morning, Year 5, and welcome to Lesson 6 of your Destination Reader Sessions. We're going to continue to read Coraline by Neil Gaiman. Remember, key words are in red, questions for you to answer are in blue, and writing time is in green. Before we make a start, please check you have a copy of the story, a strategy prompt sheet, a pencil, and a piece of paper or your home learning book. Press pause now to make sure you have all of these things, and then press play once you are ready. Coraline by Neil Gaiman. We're going to begin with strategy number 3 today, inference. I would like you to think about what inference means, and why do good readers make inferences? Make a note of your ideas on your piece of paper or in your home learning book, and then press play once you are ready. Inference means to read between the lines. If you are making inferences, you are looking for clues in the text to help you understand more. Authors sometimes leave key information out so that the reader wants to keep on reading to find out more. Well done if you remembered this from our previous lessons on inference. Let's take a look at what has happened in the story so far. You can say your answer out loud, perhaps have a discussion at home, and then press play once you are ready. So far, we have been introduced to Coraline, her family, and the house that they live in. We have also been introduced to a few characters who live around the area. We have now also met Coraline's other mother and other father, who want Coraline to stay with them forever. They have told Coraline that in order for this to happen, they will need to sew black buttons onto her eyes so that she becomes one of them. And we know that Coraline does not want this. Let's take a look at our vocabulary before we continue reading today's chapter. Expedition. Expedition, which is a journey undertaken by a group of people with a particular purpose, usually exploration, research, or war. Vague. Vague. If something is vague, it's uncertain, indefinite, or unclear, often referring to a character or meaning. Nefarious. Nefarious, which means wicked or criminal, and usually refers to an action or an activity. Make sure you have a look out for these words as we read today. This week, I will be asking questions for you to answer. Look carefully at how many marks each question is worth. Let's recap how to answer 1 mark and 2 mark questions. 1 mark questions need a short, snappy answer. For example, which type of animal does the man upstairs train for a circus? For 1 mark. My answer is going to be mice. I simply just need to write the answer to the question. 2 mark questions need a point evidence answer. The point, which is the main idea that you want to talk about, and the evidence which proves your point using facts, figures, or examples. Here's my example. How is Coraline treated by her parents for 2 marks? I think that Coraline does not get to spend as much time with her parents as she would like, because they don't seem to pay her much attention, as they are always busy or working. Coraline often asks them, "What should I do?" as she is bored and wants to explore or perhaps do something with them. My answer has a main point. It uses because to explain my point using evidence, which is written in quotation marks. We're going to begin reading. We're on chapter 5, page 59. I will read and you will follow along, and we'll stop at points to make inferences. Coraline locked the door of the drawing room with the cold black key. She went back into the kitchen and climbed onto a chair. She tried to put a bunch of keys back on top of the door again. She tried 4 or 5 times before she was forced to accept that she just wasn't big enough, and she put them down on the counter next to the door. Her mother still hadn't returned from her shopping expedition. Coraline went to the freezer and took out a spare loaf of frozen bread in the bottom compartment. She made herself some toast with jam and peanut butter. She drank a glass of water. She waited for her parents to come back. When it began to get dark, Coraline microwaved herself a frozen pizza. Then Coraline watched television. She wondered why grown-ups gave themselves all the good programs with all the shouting and running around in. After a while she started yawning. Then she undressed, brushed her teeth, and put herself to bed. In the morning she went into her parents' room, but their bed hadn't been slept in, and they weren't around. She ate tinned spaghetti for breakfast. For lunch she had a block of cooking chocolate and an apple. The apple was yellow and slightly shriveled, but it tasted sweet and good. For tea she went down to see Mrs. Spink and Forcible. She had 3 digestive biscuits, a glass of limeade, and a cup of weak tea. The limeade was very interesting. It didn't taste anything like limes. It tasted bright green and vaguely chemical. Coraline liked it enormously. She wished they had it at home. Let's stop and have a look at a question. How is Coraline's life with her real family different to life with her other family? For 2 marks. You're going to listen while I think aloud. Coraline's life with her real family is different to life with her other family because she is well looked after by her other parents. Rather than eating microwave meals, her other family cook her tasty meals, such as roasted chicken, fried potatoes, and tiny green peas. Here I've made my main point. I've used the word because, so that we know I'm about to back up my main point with some evidence. And I've also used quotation marks from the text. Let's continue. How are your dear mother and father? Asked Miss Spink. Missing, said Coraline. I haven't seen either of them since yesterday. I'm on my own. I think I've probably become a single-child family. Tell your mother that we found the Glasgow Empire press clippings we were telling her about. She seemed very interested when Miriam mentioned them to her. She's vanished under mysterious circumstances, said Coraline, and I believe my father has as well. I'm afraid we'll be out all day tomorrow, Caroline Lovey, said Miss Forcible. We'll be staying with April's niece in Royal Tunbridge Wells. They showed Coraline a photographic album with photographs of Miss Spink's niece in it, and then Coraline went home. She opened her money box and walked down to the supermarket. She bought 2 large bottles of limeade, a chocolate cake, and a new bag of apples, and she went back home and ate them for dinner. She cleaned her teeth and went into her father's office. She woke up his computer and wrote a story. Coraline's story. There was a girl, her name was Apple. She used to dance a lot. She danced and danced until her feet turned into sausages. The end. She printed out the story and turned off the computer. Then she drew a picture of the little girl dancing underneath the words on the paper. She ran herself a bath with too much bubble bath in it, and the bubbles ran over the side and went all over the floor. She dried herself and the floor as best as she could and went to bed. We're going to stop to have a look at another question. Find and copy the sentence that suggests Coraline's current responsibilities should be taken care of by her parents. For 1 mark. Say your answer out loud and then make a note of your ideas on your piece of paper or in your home learning book. Brilliant. The sentence that suggests Coraline's current responsibilities should be taken care of by her parents is, the bubbles ran over the side and went all over the floor. From this sentence, it's clear that these things should be looked after by Coraline's parents and that she is struggling slightly. Let's continue. Coraline woke up in the night. She went into her parents' bedroom, but the bed was made and empty. The glowing green numbers on the digital clock glowed 3:12 a.m. All alone, in the middle of the night, Coraline began to cry. There was no other sound in the empty flat. She climbed into her parents' bed and after a while she went back to sleep. Coraline was woken by cold paws batting her face. She opened her eyes. Big green eyes stared back at her. It was the cat. "Hello," said Coraline. "How did you get in?" The cat didn't say anything. Coraline got out of bed. She was wearing a long t-shirt and pajama bottoms. "Have you come to tell me something?" The cat yawned, which made its eyes flash green. "Do you know where Mummy and Daddy are?" The cat blinked at her slowly. "Is that a yes?" The cat blinked again. Coraline decided that that was indeed a yes. "Will you take me to them?" The cat stared at her. Then it walked out into the hall. She followed. It walked the length of the corridor and stopped down at the very end, where a full-length mirror hung. The mirror had been, a long time before, the inside of a wardrobe door. It had been hanging there on the wall when they moved in, and although Coraline's mother had spoken occasionally of replacing it with something newer, she never had. Coraline turned on the light in the hall. The mirror showed the corridor behind her. That was only to be expected, but also reflected in the mirror were her parents. They stood awkwardly in the reflection of the hall. They seemed sad and alone. As Coraline watched, they waved to her, slowly with limp hands. Coraline's father had his arm around her mother. In the mirror, Coraline's mother and father stared at her. Her father opened his mouth and said something, but she could hear nothing at all. Her mother breathed on the inside of the mirror glass, and quickly before the fog faded, she wrote, "Help us," with the tip of her forefinger. The fog on the inside of the mirror faded, and so did her parents. And now the mirror reflected only the corridor and Coraline and the cat. "Where are they?" Coraline asked the cat. The cat made no reply, but Coraline could imagine its voice dry as a dead fly on a windowsill in winter, saying, "Well, where do you think they are?" "They aren't going to come back, are they?" said Coraline. "Not under their own steam." The cat blinked at her. Coraline took it as a yes. "Right," said Coraline. "Then I suppose there is only one thing left to do." We're going to stop to have a look at another question. What has happened to Coraline's parents? For 2 marks. Say your answer out loud, and then make a note of your ideas on your piece of paper or in your home learning book, and press play once you are ready. I think that Coraline's parents have been captured by the other family because her mother wrote "help us" on the mirror glass. I've made my main point, what I think has happened to Coraline's parents, and I've backed it up with evidence from the text, which explains why I think this. Well done if you got a similar answer. Let's continue. She walked into her father's study. She sat down at his desk, then she picked up the telephone and opened the phone book and called the local police station. "Police," said a gruff male voice. "Hello," she said. "My name is Coraline Jones." "You're up a bit after your bedtime, aren't you, young lady?" said the policeman. "Possibly," said Coraline, who was not going to be diverted. "But I'm ringing to report a crime." "And what sort of crime would that be?" "Kidnapping. Grown-up napping, really. My parents have been stolen away into a world on the other side of the mirror in our hall." "And do you know who stole them?" asked the police officer. Coraline could hear a smile in his voice, and she tried extra hard to sound like an adult might sound to make him take her seriously. "I think my other mother has them both in her clutches. She may want to keep them and sew their eyes with black buttons, or she may simply have them in order to lure me back into reach of her fingers. I'm not sure." "Ah, the nefarious clutches of this fiendish fingers, is it?" he said. You know what I suggest, Miss Jones?" "No," said Coraline. "What?" You ask your mother to make you a big old mug of hot chocolate and then give you a great big old hug. There's nothing like hot chocolate and a hug for making nightmares go away. And if she starts to tell you off for waking her up at this time of night, why, you tell her that's what the policeman said. He had a deep, reassuring voice. Coraline was not reassured. When I see her, said Coraline, I shall tell her that, and she put down the telephone. The black cat, who had sat on the floor grooming its fur through this entire conversation, now stood up and led the way into the hall. Coraline went back into her bedroom and put on her blue dressing gown and her slippers. She looked under the sink for a torch and found one. But the batteries had long since run down, and it barely glowed with the faintest straw-coloured light. She put it down again and found a box of in case of emergency white wax candles and thrust one into a candlestick. She put an apple into each pocket. She picked up the ring of keys and took the old black key off the ring. She walked into the drawing room and looked at the door. She had the feeling that the door was looking back at her, which she knew was silly and knew on a deeper level was somehow true. She went back into her bedroom and rummaged in the pocket of her jeans. She found the stone with the hole in it and put it in her dressing gown pocket. She lit the candle wick with a match and watched it sputter and light. Then she picked up the black key. It was cold in her hand. She put the key into the keyhole in the door, but did not turn it. When I was a little girl, said Coraline to the cat, when we lived in our old house a long, long time ago, my dad took me for a walk on the wasteland between our house and the shops. It wasn't the best place to go for a walk, really. There were all these things that people had thrown away back there, old cookers and broken dishes and dolls with no arms and no legs, and empty cans and broken bottles. Mum and Dad made me promise not to go exploring back there, because there were too many sharp things and tetanus and such. But I kept telling them I wanted to explore it. So one day my dad put on his big brown boots and his gloves and put my boots on me and my jeans and sweater, and we went for a walk. We must have walked for about 20 minutes. We went down this hill to the bottom of a gully where a stream was, when my dad suddenly said to me, Coraline, run away, up the hill, now. He said it in a tight sort of way, urgently, so I did. I ran up the hill. Something hurt me on the back of my arm as I ran, but I kept running. As I got to the top of the hill, I heard somebody thundering up the hill behind me. It was my dad, charging like a rhino. When he reached me, he picked me up in his arms and swept me over the edge of the hill. And then we stopped and puffed and panted, and we looked back down the gully. The air was alive with yellow wasps. We must have stepped on a wasp's nest in a rotten branch as we walked. And while I was running up the hill, my dad stayed and got stung to give me time to run away. His glasses had fallen off when he ran. I only had the one sting on the back of my arm. He had 39 stings all over him. We counted later in the bath. The black cat began to wash its face and whiskers in a manner that indicated increasing impatience. Coraline reached down and stroked the back of its head and neck. The cat stood up, walked several paces until it was out of her reach, then it sat down and looked up at her again. So, said Coraline, later that afternoon my dad went back again to the wasteland to get his glasses back. He said if he left it another day, he wouldn't be able to remember where they'd fallen. And soon he got home wearing his glasses. He said that he wasn't scared when he was standing there, and the wasps were stinging him and hurting him, and he was watching me run away, because he knew he had to give me enough time to run, or the wasps would have come after both of us. Coraline turned the key in the door. It turned with a loud clunk. The door swung open. There was no brick wall on the other side of the door, only darkness. A cold wind blew through the passageway. Coraline made no move to walk through the door. We're going to stop there. Tomorrow we will continue reading Coraline and will carry on making inferences. On your piece of paper or in your home learning book, make a prediction about what you think will happen in the next part of the chapter.